Today we have to listen the benefits of Satipatthana. It is a passage that we recite every evening after the Dhamma talk. It is from the discourse called The Four Foundations of Mindfulness. Ekayano ayambekoi mego satana visuddhiya soka paridevana samadikamaya dukkha domanasana atingamaya nyayasa adigamaya nibbanasa sijikiriyaya. This passage is just a summary of the four foundations of mindfulness, but it is important that those people who practice the foundations of mindfulness or vipassana meditation understand this passage correctly and clearly. The method of the practice of mindfulness or the four foundations of mindfulness was discovered by the Buddha. He practiced Satipatthana himself and got the best results from this practice. And then for 45 years, he taught the four foundations of mindfulness many times. After his death, these methods were collected and recorded in what is known as the Pali Canon. The instruction given at Vipassana retreats are all based on the Satipatthana Sutta, which contains this passage. The first sentence is Ekayano ayambekoi mego satana visuddhiya. This is the only way, bhikkhus, for the purifications of being, namely the four foundations of mindfulness. So at the very beginning, the Buddha said, Ekayano ayambekoi mego. This is the only way. The four foundations of mindfulness or the practice of mindfulness is the only way for the purifications of beings. Here the Buddha said, this is the only way. The Pali word for this is Ekayana. Ekayana is composed of two parts, Eka and Ayana. Eka means way, path, road. Ayana means way, path, road, and Eka means one. So Ekayana means one way. This one way is interpreted to mean one way which has no branch. There is just one way, and if you tread this way, you will surely reach your destination. There are no misleading branches of this way. The other meaning is that this is the way to be taken by one. This is the way to be taken by the individual only. That means when we are treading on this path or on this way, we are alone, we have no companion, because we make progress or we do not make progress depending on our own capabilities. Also, this word is interpreted to mean the way of the One. The One here means the Buddha. The Buddha was the best of beings, and so he was called the One. And it is the way discovered and taught by the Buddha. So that is called the way of the One, the way of the Buddha. Another meaning is Eka Ayana. It is only existing in the dispensation of the Buddha. We are very fortunate. We believe this method, and this method is existing in this Buddha's dispensation. And also it is to mean the only way, it is the only way, there is no other way for the purifications of being, and so on. And it is the way that goes solely to Nibbana, the cessation of all suffering. Now, with regard to the translation, the only way, there are two questions. One is that here, four foundations of mindfulness means mindfulness only. But there are other factors of the Noble Eightfold Path. So the other factors also not the way to purifications of beings is the question. The answer is that they are also the way to purifications of all beings. But they do not exist without mindfulness. So when mindfulness is mentioned, they are virtually mentioned. That is, although mindfulness alone is mentioned here, we should understand that all the other seven factors that are concomitant with the noble path are also implied. The other question raised by some people is, why did the Buddha say this is the only way? And there are other ways for the purifications of beings. So these people argue that there are different roads to reach a city, and just as there are different roads to a city, there must be different ways to reach purifications of being and to reach Nibbana. Some people do not like this, or they thought the Buddha would not have said, this is the only way. Sometimes analogies are not really correct. It is true that there are different roads to reach this town, but they are roads, they are not marshes or forests. And so the road is the only way to reach this town. There may be different roads, but they are roads. In the same way, there may be different ways of practicing mindfulness, but they must be mindfulness. Only mindfulness can lead us to the attainment of nirvana. Also, if we say physical exercise is the only way to build big muscle, if you want to build big muscle, you have to do physical exercise. Without physical exercise, you cannot hope to build muscle. But physical exercise can take different forms such as weightlifting or using machine and so on. In the same way, mindfulness is the only way to reach nirvana, but mindfulness may take different forms. Even in this discourse on the foundations of mindfulness, mindfulness practice is taught in 21 ways. There are 21 different kinds of mindfulness practice to choose from. Therefore, it is correct to say that this is the only way. So mindfulness is the only way. People may argue here because the word used here is ekayana, one way. But in another place, in the Dhammapada, Buddha said clearly, this alone is the way and there is no other way for the purity of wisdom. So we cannot argue that Buddha said there is any other way. He expressly said that this alone is the way and there is no other way. So we must accept that this is the only way for the purifications of beings. If we consider it with reference to the practice, it becomes clear. You understand mindfulness is like a guard. Once the guard is removed, anything can come in. So as long as mindfulness is at the sense doors, our minds are pure. No unwholesome mental states can come into our minds because mindfulness is there guarding the six and doors. Once mindfulness is removed, or once we lose mindfulness, all these mental defilements come in. So mindfulness is the only way to keep our mind pure. And we have to note here also that mindfulness is one of the 8 factors of the Noble Eightfold Path described in the Dhammapada. And if the Eightfold Path is the only way, then mindfulness surely is the only way too. Again, mindfulness may take different forms, such as mindfulness of the body, mindfulness of feeling, mindfulness of consciousness, mindfulness of Dhamma objects, or mindfulness of the parts of the body, and so on. So if it is mindfulness, it is the only way for the purifications of being. Satana Visuddhiya. This is the only way for the purifications of being. For the purifications of being means for the purification of the minds of being. Because Buddha is more concerned about the purifications of mind than the purifications of the physical body, although it does not mean that we do not take care of the cleanliness of our physical body. What is more important for us is the cleanliness of our minds. So the purifications of beings here means purifications of minds of beings. In the commentaries, it is said that personal cleanliness or cleanliness of the body as well as the cleanliness of the place are conducive to concentration and wisdom. So we also need to keep our bodies clean and keep the place where we meditate clean. Although we are not neglect the cleanliness of the body, we should be more concerned about the cleanliness of our minds. So here Buddha said that mindfulness is the only way for the purifications of minds of beings. With this passage, Buddha mentioned the benefits we will get from the practice of mindfulness. The first benefit the Buddha mentioned is Satipatthana Visuddhiya, purifications of mind. And then Buddha said, Toka Paridevana Samatikamaya, for the overcoming of sorrow and lamentation. If we want to overcome sorrow and lamentation or cry aloud, we should practice mindfulness. Mindfulness is the only way to overcome sorrow and lamentation. Here, sorrow is a mental state. Lamentation is crying aloud through sorrow and saying this or saying that. To overcome sorrow and lamentation also, we should practice the four foundations of mindfulness. And another benefit is dukkha domanasana attingamaya. This is the only way for the disappearance of pain and grief. Pain here means physical pain, pain in the body. Grief means mental pain, depression, ill will, hatred. All these are included in the word domanassa, grief. For the overcoming and disappearance of pain and grief, we should practice the four foundations of mindfulness. But you understand, you may not conquer pain, you may not overcome pain altogether. Pain may not disappear altogether. But if you practice mindfulness, you will be able to live with pain and accept it, like that of the Venerable Anuruddha. Your mind will not be disturbed or perturbed by the physical pain. If your mind is not perturbed by physical pain, pain is virtually non-existent. So for the disappearance of pain or the overcoming of pain, we should practice mindfulness meditation. For the overcoming of grief, overcoming of ill will, depression, and so on, we should practice mindfulness meditation. Grief is a mental state, and sorrow is also a mental state. They are actually connected with each other. These are mental states, and so these mental states can be overcome or made to disappear or can be avoided by the practice of mindfulness. Mind cannot take two things or more than one things at a time. Mind can only take one object at a time. We are lucky if the mind could take two or more things at a time, our suffering would be much greater. Since mind can take only one thing at a time, we can overcome sorrow and grief by the practice of mindfulness. Let us take anger. For example, suppose I am angry with Mr. A. So long as my mind is on Mr. A, my anger will increase and I will getting more and more angry with him because I am taking him as the object of my consciousness or mind. But but once I turn my mind from Mr. A, who is the source of my anger, to anger itself, the moment I turn my mind to anger itself, Mr. A does not exist for me at that time. He is he has already disappeared from my mind. When my mind is on the anger itself, and when the source of anger has disappeared, anger has disappeared also. That way, we treat such mental state with mindfulness, with just simple but strong and forceful mindfulness. That is how we deal with what are called emotions such as attachment, anger, hatred, depression, and sorrow. Whatever the mental state, we just treat it with mindfulness and try to be mindful of it. When our mindfulness is really strong, these mental states will surely disappear. So Buddha said, Ekayano ayam bhikkhave mego Sokabri Devana Atingamaya, Dukkha Domanasana Atingamaya. This is the only way to overcome sorrow and lamentation and to overcome pain and grief. And Buddha said, Nyayasa Adigamaya. This is the only way for reaching the noble path. You may understand path. Path is a technical term. It is a name for the combination or group of the 8 factors of the path: right understanding, right thinking, right speech, right action, right livelihood, right effort, right mindfulness, and right concentration. 8 factors of the path that arise at the moment of enlightenment. The type of consciousness that arises at the moment of enlightenment that is accompanied by these factors is called Megaceta, path consciousness. The word enlightenment is another technical word whose meaning is not easy to understand. People use this word quite freely, but only a few might understand its meaning properly. Without definition, it is vague. It may mean different things to different persons or different religions. Enlightenment for a Buddhist may be quite different from the enlightenment for a Christian. When we talk about enlightenment, we should first define it. According to Buddhism, enlightenment means the eradication of mental defilements and see nirvana directly, see nirvana face to face at the same time. As a person practices vipassana meditation and progress from one stage to another to higher and higher stages, as the result of this vipassana practice, a time will come when in his mind a type of consciousness arises which he has not experienced before. That type of consciousness, along with its mental concomitants, is so powerful that it can eradicate mental defilements altogether, not to come back again. At the same time, it takes nirvana as object. So what we mean by enlightenment is what happens at that moment. A moment when that consciousness arises, eradicates mental defilements, and takes nirvana as object. So that consciousness is called path consciousness. Immediately following that path consciousness are 2 or 3 moments of fruition consciousness, palacheta. We have to understand Abhidhamma to understand this fully. So for reaching the noble path simply means for gaining enlightenment. When you really reach the noble path, you become enlightened and you are able to eradicate mental defilements and take Nibbana as object. And finally, Buddha mentioned Nibbanasa Sichikiriyaya. This is the only way for the realizations of Nibbana. It is the same thing as reaching the noble path. So when a meditator reaches the noble path, and when the path consciousness arises in him or her, and that consciousness takes Nibbana as object, that is when he or she is said to have realized Nibbana. So reaching the noble path and reaching realizations of Nibbana mean the same. And Buddha said that the practice of mindfulness is the only way to purify our minds, the only way to overcome sorrow and lamentation, to overcome pain and grief, to reach the noble path, and to realize Nibbana, namely the four foundations of mindfulness. Here also we have the words foundation and mindfulness. First, let us understand what mindfulness is. All of us have been practicing mindfulness for many years, but sometimes when we are asked, what is mindfulness? We may not be able to give a satisfactory answer. Mindfulness is the translation of the Pali word sati. The discourse is called Satipatthana. So you have the word sati there. This sati is translated as mindfulness. Sati means remembering, but it covers more than remembering actually. Etymologically, sati means remembering, but in normal usage, sati means more than that. Sati is defined in the commentary as remembering, and the characteristic of sati is said to be non-wobbling. That means not floating on the surface. If it is sati, it must not be superficial. It must go deep into the object instead of just floating on the surface. That is why we always say full awareness of the object or thorough awareness of the object. Sati is said to have the function of not losing the object. As long as there is sati or mindfulness, you do not lose that object. You do not forget that object. Mindfulness has the function of not losing or forgetting the object. It is like a guard at the gate. So that is what we call mindfulness. Mindfulness is not superficial awareness. It is a deep and thorough awareness of the object. Foundations of mindfulness means actually setting up of mindfulness or firmly established mindfulness or mindfulness firmly established. Satipatthana is translated as foundations of mindfulness, but we must understand that it means setting up of a firm mindfulness or establishing a firm mindfulness. So the practice of establishing firm mindfulness is called the foundations of mindfulness, Satipatthana. In this discourse, Buddha said that there are four foundations of mindfulness. When you practice vipassana meditation at a retreat like this, you practice all these four foundations of mindfulness, but you practice them choicelessly and not one after another in the order given in the discourse. That is because when you practice vipassana meditation, you have to be mindful of the object at the present moment. You cannot afford not to be mindful of the object at the present moment. The object at the present moment can be any one of these four: Kaya, Vedana, Chitta, or Dhamma. Kaya body, Vedana feeling, Chitta consciousness, and Dhamma object. So sometimes the body, Kaya, sometimes feeling, Vedana, sometimes consciousness, Chitta, and sometimes Dhamma objects. You have to take these objects as they come. You have no choice. So that is why sometimes Vipassana meditation is called choiceless awareness. That means you have no choice. You just have to take what is presented to you. So you practice the four foundations of mindfulness choicelessly when you practice. Here in this summary, the Buddha taught us how to practice the four foundations of mindfulness. So what are the four? Katame Chataro, Ita Bhekkhwe Bhikkhu Kaye Kayanupasi Viharati, Atapi Sambhajano Satima Vinaya Loke Beja Domanasam. The Buddha said, herein a monk or a practitioner dwells contemplating the body in the body, ardent, clearly comprehending and mindful, overcoming covetousness and grief in the world. It is a very short sentence, but it has many meanings. Kaya Kayanupasi Viharati. Contemplating the body in the body. That means When you practice mindfulness of the body, you are precise. You contemplate the body in the body, and you do not contemplate the feeling in the body. You do not contemplate the person in the body, and so on. You contemplate the body, which is impermanent, suffering, and non-self. So you contemplate the body in the body in order to have a precise object. Buddha repeated the words body, feeling, consciousness, and Dhamma in this sentence. So that means you are precise in your mindfulness of the body, feelings, consciousness, and Dhamma. When you practice body contemplation, you are ardent, you are clearly comprehending, and you are mindful. Atapi, with regard to the words ardent, this word atapi is the translation of the Pali words atapa. Atapi comes from atapa. Atapa means heat of the sun. Heat of the sun can heat up things so that things become withered and they may even burn. So in the same way, the effort heats up the mental defilements or burns them up. So it is called atapa, and the person who has atapa is called atapi, the E denoting possession. So the person who possesses atapa is called atapi. When we read the sutta in Bali, when we read the word atapi, we have that in our mind. We see the effort burning up the mental defilements. When you translate this word into English as ardent, you lose that image. So atapi means you make real effort, not a slack effort. You make a real effort to be mindful and to clearly comprehend. When the Buddha stayed a bodhisattva, sat down under the Bodhi tree to practice to become the Buddha, he made a very firm resolution in his mind. May my skin, sinews, and bone remain, and may my flesh and blood dry up, but I will not desist from, or I will not give up this superhuman effort until I reach Buddhahood. I will not get up from the seat until I reach Buddhahood. I will make effort, every effort to achieve my aim. Bodhisattva made this very firm resolution in his mind when he practiced. Such an effort is called the right effort. So to make the right effort means you have to make a really good effort, not a slacking effort. This word atapi implies all these meanings. The right effort to be understood here is the right effort. That is one of the 8 factors of the path. You may have read about right effort in other books. Right effort means to remove unwholesome mental states or to avoid unwholesome mental states and to acquire and cultivate wholesome mental states. In order to resist unwholesome mental states, in order to resist evil, you need mental effort. If you do not make effort, you cannot resist evil. Effort is very useful in removing unwholesome mental states and also to cultivate wholesome mental states. To develop wholesome mental states, you need effort. If you do not make effort, you do not come here. If you do not want to make effort, you do not come to this retreat at all. So you need a real strong effort to practice the foundations of mindfulness. Here also Buddha described the monk, the meditators, as being ardent, which means he has that kinds of effort that burns up the mental defilements. That is indicated by the word atapi in this Pali text. So we will continue next time. We have to stop our discussion for today. By practicing Vipassana meditation, by observing every phenomena occurring at the 6 senses, by noting rising, falling, sitting, standing, stretching, bending, seeing, hearing, smelling, tasting, touching, continuously and meticulously, may all yogis be liberated from all suffering. May all meditators realize the real peace in the very near future.